Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Dr. Drew Brannon here in our studio in Greenville, South Carolina today. Really excited and fired up about this conversation. If you have not been with us in the past, this podcast exists to help you optimize and enhance who you are and what you do. We are grateful at AMPLOS to serve in the field of performance psychology and are all about helping you grow, develop, and become the human that you desire to be. Today, joined by some great folks from Equip Studio. Those of you that are not yet familiar with Equip will be very familiar with Equip by the time we finish today. So let's jump into it. Alisha, I want to start with you. So we're joined today by both Alisha Coleman and Sims Key, which, full disclosure, Sims Key is also, although he's better known for his fantastic work at Equip, he's also my brother-in-law. So we'll get to you here shortly. But Alisha, would love to, as we kind of begin our conversation, if you would just share a little bit about your background. How did you find your way to Equip?
Yeah, so I grew up in Western North Carolina and studied interior design at the University of Tennessee, and then went to Clemson for grad school in architecture, and was actually a coworker of some of the partners at Equip at my first big girl job. And then moved away from that, taught for a year, and then moved to Columbia and was pursued by one of the partners to come back. Moved back during COVID to the upstate and was able to come back into the office, and then recently became a shareholder at Equip.
Well, congrats on that. What
Thank
a fantastic journey and progression for you.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And then your counterpart here has been around for quite a while. They're still letting him hang around over there, which I guess he's earned that. So Sims, put the pieces together for us, please, about kind of your journey with Equip.
Yeah, so thanks, Drew. So glad to be here. I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, the bustling city of Florence, South Carolina. We spent a lot of time together there, visiting parents and family. I grew up in Florence, went to Furman University here in Greenville for undergrad. I got an art degree there, and because I didn't know what else to do. So had a little bit of creative juices in me. So I got an art degree, then went to Clemson for grad school in architecture. I went into Furman thinking I would be a math major, and quickly realized I wasn't cut out for that.
That was a big pivot, by the way.
Yeah, math
to art.
And my dad was like, oh, math and art, I think you would be a good architect. So there's a lot of both of those in what we do. And my dad was an architect, never pushed me too hard, but encouraged me to seek it out, and then went to Clemson for grad school. After grad school, spent a few years in California working for a great firm out there, ELS Architects, and then I moved back here 14 years ago and started working with my dad in a remote position here in Greenville, as his firm was in Florence. About 3 years later, this is now 11 years ago, I met the other three partners at Equip now, and they were looking for something else to do. And I said, why don't you come and join us? And when they joined us, we launched, we were a Key Architecture at the time, but then we decided, it's more than just Key now. So we're going to rebrand this thing. We're going to launch a new firm out of this new ownership group and call it Equip Studio. And that's where it began.
What year was that?
That was 2014.
2014. Okay,
Yeah.
so 11 years in the. So let's. I want to get in before we get into because Equip has done some incredible things in the way of accolades that you guys have earned, which is awesome. And so I kind of want to level set our conversation in that way. But before we get into those, my curious brain always gets going on like, why Equip? So why don't you take that one? Because you were, I would imagine, part of those conversations of. And if you've never done that before, it's not exactly easy to land on like, this is what we're going to call our company.
Yeah.
So take us, hit the rewind button. How did it become Equip?
Yeah, so we all got in a room, the four partners now and my dad at the time, and we kind of batted around a bunch of different names, and the other three partners came from a firm where they're doing a lot of church design work. And so one of the mantras that they would use, or the taglines that they would use, is kind of equipping the church to do their work, to do their ministry well through architecture. And so that tagline kind of stuck with us. Also, the website was available, which was a huge plus. A number of the other names we went through, the website was not available.
Hey, if you've never done this before, that matters. That is a big deal.
So those were the two, that formula there of equipping our clients to do their work well through architecture, and the website being available was the magic formula.
And at that stage of the game, the vision for what you hoped Equip would become was what?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's really been a organic foray into business for me, because as my dad kind of started moving into retirement and I started doing a little more business stuff, I just started thinking, like, how do we do business? And especially coming from a faith background where I really wanted to look to Jesus and the Bible as a model for leadership as we try to lead other people, hire other people, guide other people in this profession. How can we do business in a way that honors God and honors people? We just started trying out a bunch of things at first, but we knew that what we wanted to do was a little bit different from typical architectural practices. We have a bad stereotype in our field of overworking young people, of creating this barrier to relationships and hobbies outside of the office, that your work becomes your life, and you really have to kind of a pay your dues mentality of you got to put your time in here, not make much money, kind of suffer like I did when I was young, until you're at a place where you can start doing the fun things like design, where you can start having flexibility in your job, where you can start actually making some money, where you can start having control over your career path and things like that. And we knew that model for business, it felt dehumanizing to us. And so we started asking questions like, how can we set up a practice where the opposite of that actually happens, and we can actually humanize this practice and do business in a different way?
I love that word, to humanize business. There are quite a few examples out there of maybe where that's not happening. And so that's not as much as a criticism or an indictment on those folks as it is, I think it's admirable to me that you guys have been really atypical from the beginning of how you try to do this. And so let me make a couple connections here. Beginning with, it's interesting, we've talked on our podcast in the past about, and maybe you guys have read this, there's a great article that Harvard Business Review put out years ago about what they call their centennial companies. And so a centennial company is simply a company that's existed for over 100 years. And they did a big study several years ago to try to understand what makes those companies different. Like, how do you pull that off?
Yeah.
Everybody would love to be in business for 100 plus years. In reality, less than 1% of companies will. And two themes that resulted from that study that I just heard in your comments, Sims, would be, number one, highly mission driven of like, look, we're going to be clear about how we want to go about this stuff. Yeah. And although I guess technically the service you're providing or offering is architecture services and design services, you're not thinking about yourself strictly through that lens. And that's consistent with the Centennials. The second thing was and is clarity in who we want to be, value driven, those types of things. So who knows, maybe there are 100 years in your future if you can keep this model going. So let's pause here for a second, because you've laid out, I think, in a very descriptive way what the hope was. And I want to now connect some of the awards that have been won to really kind of frame up the conversation even further. And then, Alisha, we're coming to you to talk about talk about the niche that you guys are in.
All right.
So just through both the mentality and the blueprint that Sims just laid out for us there, let me kind of go through these. We can't read all of these because we wouldn't have time to talk about anything else on the podcast today. So, and some of these lists I think people will be very familiar with, beginning with Inc. 5000. Inc. is a popular publication. Most folks are familiar and read it. They annually put out what's called their fastest growing companies. Equip has been on that list 2017, 18, 19, 20, 24. They're Great Place to Work certified 23, 24, 25. South Carolina fastest growing companies, number 27 in 2023, number 24 in 2024. And then I also want to highlight this, South Carolina Best in Business, Best Architecture Firm in 2024, Best Commercial ID Firm, and Best Overall Company. They were number 3 on the Best Overall Company list in 2024. So, and we could go on and on. I think obviously the clear takeaway here is you guys have done a heck of a job of creating a culture and delivering, over delivering to your clients. And people have recognized that. So Alisha, help everybody better understand. I know we've established you guys are in architecture and design. What's the niche area that you guys really do, call kind of your sweet spot?
Yeah, like Sim said, it kind of grew out of 3 of the partners being heavy into church work, their previous firm. So I would say that's our bread and butter. We do church work all over the country at this point. And then we do a little bit of everything else locally. So we have some higher ed projects and some healthcare. But I think with all of this, we really try to go after projects where the mission and vision of those companies align with ours. So we're not just going to go after every university project or every healthcare project out there, but we really try to missionally align with our clients in those areas.
Yeah, and for us, that really means is there a company that's thinking the same way that we're thinking about business, about how they're treating their people, how they're treating their clients as well, and so trying to create almost a network of like-minded individuals that are doing that. And so we've always said we're committed to the church nationally from a design standpoint, but we're also committed to our community in whatever capacity that might look like. And so far that's looked like a lot of work with healthcare, a lot of work with higher ed locally, and we got a great hotel project with a developer that's like-minded in a lot of ways, and we're excited about that project as well. So yeah, anybody that has a similar vision, mission to us.
So the portfolio really kind of covers the gamut, although you have done a ton in the church space.
Yes.
But you guys are diverse as well. So Alisha, I think you've got a really interesting perspective, I would imagine, on Equip, in that you have sat in so many seats along the way. So I think you started part-time remote, correct?
With Equip, yeah.
And then you've progressed all the way to now full-time in the office, and not just that, but a shareholder here.
Well, I'm actually part-time still as a shareholder.
Okay, but as a shareholder. So you've gone from remote in Columbia to locally here in Greenville as a shareholder. Can you just, wide open here, flexibility-wise, can you walk us through a little bit kind of your progression and your thoughts along the way, particularly in terms of why did you want to be a part of this? And why did you want to pick up your life and move from Columbia and come and really be a big part of the growth?
Well, first of all, just to be able to be, I do have two daughters, so family is first and foremost for me. And to be able to do this job part-time was huge. And I was part-time at my firm before, but in a very limited, you're only part-time, you can only do this capacity. And so I think the biggest change for me coming to Equip was there wasn't really a ceiling. There was never this is where you stop because you are part-time and because you are a mom and you want to be a mom first. And so actually, Equip hired me when I was 6 months pregnant. So for them to even take a risk to bring me on remotely, when I'll work a couple months and then I'm going to take a few months off.
Right.
So that was, I think that just speaks to the leadership and the culture and their mindset that they would even be willing to bring me on like that. And at the time, I just assumed I would be remote pretty much forever. And then through some career stuff for my husband, we ended up moving back to the upstate. And so again, I'm in the office basically when my kids are in school, and I'm able to be a mom. Again, when they're at home, I'm at home for the most part, and put them first while not feeling like I'm having to leave my career in the background or choose one over the other. I think typically in architecture, for women especially, you choose one or the other to be your main focus. And to be able to feel there are crazy weeks, but for the most part, to feel like I can truly be at home when I'm at home with my kids and my husband, and then do the best architecture I can when I'm at work, that's just been a game changer in terms of what architecture usually looks like.
Yeah, and so I'm obviously not that familiar with what the more conventional, traditional world of architecture tends to be. And so that, to me, go back to your words you used earlier, Sims, of we wanted to humanize how we went about our business. Well, that's internally as well, probably internally first, right? You take care of the people internally
for sure
prior to doing anything else. So it sounds like you have felt that in a very deep way.
Yeah, if you had told me, even 10 years ago that I would be able to, even in school, people would say, oh, you can work from home, you can be part-time. I'm like, no, not in architecture. That was always my answer. But the Lord has just been I'm going to prove you wrong and show you that you can have a fulfilling career, but your family doesn't have to sacrifice for that.
So let's drill down on that for just a second, because I want to provide a concrete example here for our listeners in that as you're hearing this and you're thinking about your business, your industry, whatever it might be, it may or may not translate in the exact ways we're talking about here with Alisha's example, but the theme does. And so the theme is the importance of leaders being genuinely invested in their people, not just for or because of what they can bring to the organization, but who they are as humans. Mm-hmm. And I have heard no shortage of examples over the years, especially from folks that work with maybe larger companies. And to be clear, you can work for a mega company and have a fantastic culture. But one of the places leaders can really get off track is creating an environment and a culture within your team where people feel like the primary reason you're invested in them is so that they will bring a lot to the table. And there's a limited shelf life on that.
Yeah. I mean, our vision from the get-go has been to, our tagline for vision is we exist to enrich people's lives by transforming the architectural experience. And so the typical architectural experience like we've talked about is not one that would humanize a work environment, especially for a working mom. And so how can we actually make someone's life better because they work at Equip? And so for Alisha, she's not only able to work and be a mom, but she's actually able to be a better mom because she works at Equip. And typically work is a barrier to healthy home life, healthy hobbies, healthy physical life, healthy mental life. So how can we use our firm actually to help people be better in each of those areas? And it really takes thinking outside of the box and holding yourselves accountable and things like that. So yeah, that's the goal.
That's really cool, because I think especially, and I've seen this and heard this so many times, anytime a person attaches the word can't to some type of thing they wish they could be doing in their life that they aren't, it's almost always in the same sense with some limiting factor associated with work.
Yeah.
I travel too much. My schedule's too bad. My boss is too tough, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like I can't because of this work variable.
Yeah.
And so you guys have tried to really kind of bust through the barrier of that, it sounds like.
Yeah. And life is really hard. And so the goal at Equip is to help care for people when they go through situations like that.
Yep. Okay, so then let's speak to this, Sims and Alisha, because I'm now hearing the voice in my head that I know is maybe others have as they're driving down the road or wherever they're hearing this podcast. They're saying, "Okay, well done, guys. You have created a deeply humanizing culture and doing some really unique things. Maybe not, however, but whatever. Like, we got to stay in business." Right? Like we got to churn results, whether that's for shareholders, whether that's for stockholders, whoever, like we've got to be effective. Yeah. So let's now talk about that a little bit, because I don't want anyone to walk away from this conversation making the mistake of thinking that you guys have just created a great culture. You know, we believe that leveraging your people and investing in your people is the greatest competitive advantage a company can harness. So Sims, can you walk us through a little bit some of the growth of Equip over the years? And we certainly don't need to hear specific dollars and cents, but can you talk about kind of growth related to projects, revenue, et cetera, and then also the team?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of this has to do with dollars and cents, because we, a traditional, like financially based practice would make decisions based on what can make us more efficient, what can make us more profitable. And then when you do that, you have to sacrifice people a lot of times if that's your driving influence. But if it's not your driving influence, if humanizing people and caring for people is your driving influence, then sometimes financially you suffer, right? And so one of the things that we knew from the get-go is whatever the multiple is from a typical partner at an architectural firm to the lowest person, whatever multiple is, we're not going to be able to fulfill that in our own personal lives as partners. Like we're going to have to give up some of our power and money in order to empower other people. And so generosity is one of our core values, and that goes down to our pocketbooks. And we have to be okay with sacrificing, being as profitable as we could possibly be or as efficient as we possibly can be, because we give more PTO, because we provide space for people to have mentorship opportunities, because we do fun things at our firm, because we have a Monday huddle every week where we get to know each other and gather around a table to catch up on life. And so we knew from the get-go that we had to in order to do something different, that we had to think differently about it. And in terms of growth, we approached it kind of the same way. We're not going to hire up in order to fulfill some glamorous project that we just took on, because a typical architectural practice or typical corporate America would hire for a big project if they got one, because it would be super profitable. And then if that project went away or you didn't have one that follows, you would typically maybe get rid of some of those people. That is not how we've tried to grow. We've tried to grow by hiring great people, and then trusting that the work would come organically through that. And so we haven't hired in huge swaths. We haven't hired really fast. We've grown by about 3 or 4 people a year. So we started with 5 of us, and now we're at 40 after 10 years. 11 years. And so trying to hire smart. We use Patrick Lencioni's Humble, Hungry, Smart to hire the right people and get the right people and use their gifts to help our firm grow and to be a better version of ourselves as a firm. Sandy Gibbs is our business development guy. He does a great job networking. We have a great relationships with churches across the country, and we believe that when we take care of our people, they're going to take care of our clients. So they feel that they're cared for and loved by our firm, and so our clients have felt that from our people because they know how to extend that as well. And then we've just seen a lot of repeat work because of that, growth through repeat churches, but also churches telling other churches about Equip. And also in town, when we were able to work with people in town, we continue to get work with those same people over and over again. So our growth has been really organic and smart and slow in a way, and not reckless, because we don't want to jeopardize over hiring or getting kind of over our skis in that sense.
So a clear theme I hear in there, Sims, and I hear this from leaders plenty in different industries, is you guys have had a heavy internal focus, like let's build the plane very thoughtfully, and trust that by doing it that way, there will be external success that comes with that results will follow. And, I think if we're honest, a lot of leaders out there can be kind of afraid to do that. Like they feel like they've got to direct more time, energy, and attention externally, right? Of like, hey, whether it's securing business or it's prioritizing what the client might need, those types of things. And you guys have flipped that model a good bit and said, no, we're going to be hyper focused on doing great, excellent things internally and let that drive the engine. Yeah, is what I hear.
Yeah, and when you're hiring only 1 or 2 people at a time, and there's some margin there to absorb kind of some fluctuations in business, we felt okay with it. Like, and again, that might require a little bit of a hit to the pocket of the shareholders,
right?
And we're okay with that. Like we're just, in order to hire the right people for the long term, we've understood the gives and takes of that.
So Alisha, let's come to you with a question I have. And we've talked a lot already about some of the specific elements of the culture that has been created and continues to be kind of sustained at Equip. Where have you seen, or how have you seen that culture really prove to be a competitive advantage for you all? Whether that be in relationships with clients, whether that be in recruiting, retention, like where have you seen the culture really show up in some measurable ways?
Yeah, well, one of our core values is family-centric, and I think probably almost every company across the country would say, yeah, we're family-centric.
Yeah, that word gets thrown out there, let's be honest.
Right, but I think Equip really lives it out. And one thing that we tell our clients when we do some initial meetings with them is we want to become part of your family so that we can think like you, and it just makes us better because we're making 1 million decisions on every single project, and if we went to the owner with every single one of those, it would drive them crazy. But if we can get to know them well enough and become part of their family and understand how they think and how they operate, it just makes us better.
So you get from the outset of like, as you guys kind of set the tempo with potential clients, you're using the language, it sounds like, of, hey, this is our language. When we work together, when we partner together, we see you very much as how we see each other day in and day out.
Yeah. And then I just recently finished up a project locally, and to hear the pastor from the pulpit say, we have relationships with all these people in the front row that we're celebrating our grand opening. And so to hear that at the end of a project, not that the project every day was smooth, but at the end of the day, to know that they felt like we were part of their team and pulling with them and for them. Was huge. And then I think that translates internally also. Like, I think almost anybody in our office would say, this is my Equip family. Like, I think we just have really strong bonds, and because of the culture have put prioritizing that and building relationships internally.
That example highlights why I am so jealous of you architects in the world, because when you guys get to the end of a project, there's like something very clear and established to like speak for, like, there it is, you know. In the world of psychology, although you get maybe some glimpses of that in certain ways, it's different than like there is now a building standing there. Yeah. And I can point to and be like, wow, that was a fun thing to be a part of.
But once there's a building, there's no more work.
Well, yeah, not jealous of that part quite as much. But at the same time, I don't think you guys have had trouble finding the next one.
Yeah.
Following that.
Yeah. One of the things I want to add to what Alisha brought up is that we tell people honestly, like, if you want to make as much money as you can possibly make, Equip is probably not the place for you. But what we're going to provide for you is a place that cares about you and provides you support for areas outside of your life. And so because of that, we've actually never had anybody leave Equip for more money at another firm. We've had people leave for a number of other reasons, moving away or different opportunities, but nobody's ever left for more money, which I think is very interesting. And that really speaks to how valued and cared for people feel when they work at Equip. Retention has been a huge part of us. Like, as we've invested in great people, most people have ended up staying, and that's been a huge asset for us.
I would say along with that, people, because of the leadership being very transparent with where the firm is, financially, the outlooks, that's one thing that I've seen a big difference in Equip and some other firms is just we know what the forecast is looking like, and we, Sims and the partners are very open with where we are. And so just being able to buy in because you feel like they're leading you well, and they're not, they don't have all these closed door conversations, and you never know what's going on, big picture.
And those are both, I think, significant statements you guys just made, particularly as it relates to retention. People really, really underestimate and can be very short-sighted about how expensive it is to lose people. And although it's not strictly about the dollars and cents, certainly not what we believe or what you guys believe, it's amazing to me how many short-sighted decisions get made where people willingly will like let people go or create a culture that almost like necessitates them going. And they just don't understand how costly it is to, not just from a dollar and cents, but think about the energy drain.
Yeah.
And I hear it a lot from people, the energy drain associated with another person leaving.
Yeah.
And we've got to go back to the hiring process. And it's a huge time, energy suck for leaders.
Yeah. And I think back to your question about how you still got to stay in business, even though you have fun and have a great culture. I mean, part of that is our people are incredibly efficient because when they're working, they're all in, like they're all
point.
there. And then also we're not spending a whole lot of time in recruiting and retaining people and having to replace people. And so there are areas where a great culture gives you a leg up on efficiency. I mean, we consistently are very, very in track with market standards on profitability and percentage of profit per revenue every year. And so that's not because we're overworking our people or we're nickel and diming our clients. It's because our people are incredibly efficient and good at what they do, and we're giving them space and empowering them to do work well.
I'm glad you touched on that, because those are the kind of things that certain people, depending on how they're wired, need to hear.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, we're not just picking some great values and upholding them, like we're tracking things. And I know you're in the details. I mean, having seen your Disney World daily itineraries years ago, my man can be in the details. All right. He can lay it out there with a very scheduled approach. So I know you're looking at those things.
Yeah.
I just had to show up. It was kind of nice, honestly.
Awesome.
I didn't have to wonder if this was the best, should we be going over to Space Mountain right now, or would it be better to hit in the 1 o'clock window? I didn't have to worry about that.
Had to gamify it. Yeah. I think we rode 34 rides that day, which
wow.
has to be close to a Magic Kingdom record.
That's exactly what I was referring to. All right, Alisha, let me hit you with this one. And maybe this is something you guys talk about, maybe it isn't. I want you to feel a lot of freedom to answer this. And that is, how is the word success defined at Equip?
Like Senza said, it's never been about the bottom line, being the most profitable. I think success is if we have a healthy work-life wholeness for our employees, and then also, delivering well for our clients. So I think having successful projects at the end of the day is a measure of success and return clients, but then also that our culture is able to be maintained and that our people have work-life wholeness, which I think is even more than, you hear work-life balance a lot, but really leaning into the wholeness of work and life.
What's the difference?
Well, I think balance is you're teetering back and forth. Have one, if you think of like a scale, one is always kind of heavier than the other one. And then wholeness is like, I can wholly, fully be the best architect I can be, but I can also be the best mom I can be. And so it just feels different to me in the kind of the mental picture of what I get with balance versus wholeness.
So for you, the thought of wholeness means you don't feel like any of your roles are getting cheated, I think is what you're saying, or that there's any less of you showing up to whether it be the mom role, the spouse role, et cetera.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Anything you would add to that about what success means to you all?
We measure success in two ways: how much our people enjoy coming to work and feel cared for at work, and then how much our clients felt like they got a great value out of the work we did for them. And so those are the two ways we measure success, regardless of the profitability of that year. Now that helps, and we're able to share profits with our people, and everybody gets excited about that, but it's definitely not the measure of success.
One thing that I think also sets Equip apart from my previous firms is the mentorship program that we have. So, every month, every employee meets with a mentor, and we're really try to not shy away from the hard questions and really understanding where people are and, both personally and professionally. And we do roadmaps. So it's about 2 years, we do a roadmap. So the firm kind of says, this is kind of the trajectory we see you on, and then put that beside with the trajectory that the person feels like they're on, and try to get alignment there and talk through growth strategies, really normalizing growth and not thinking there's an expectation that you should already be good at everything. But I feel like the biggest thing is, like Sim said, we have weekly check-ins where Sims will sometimes ask these kinds of questions, very pointed questions, to get response, just to feel the temperature of the office as a whole. But then we also have one-on-ones monthly where, it's more of a personal relationship, and you can really dig in a little more there.
Yep.
Yeah, we realized that we could say everything we want to say about this vision and the core values we want to create, but unless we have the processes in place to make those happen, they're not going to happen. So John Deneen's one of our partners, has done a great job of helping us set up systems so that we can actually fulfill the core values and the vision that we want to fulfill, because they're not going to happen on their own. Like, we're going to default to thinking about ourselves and making decisions based on the bottom line. And but if we have systems set in place, not only just systems set in place, but we have accountability measures, because we try to be vulnerable with the firm. And so we're asking the firm, how are we doing in these areas that we say we want to be? And so getting feedback from them real time, like I was reading from here, to say, where are ways that you have felt celebrated? Where are ways that we can help you do your job better and be a better support for you? As we found that we can't do it without having those processes in place.
That's the difference, right? Because it is not difficult to grab your leadership team and find some great, cool place to go do your offsite and get real busy on the whiteboard and feel awesome coming away. You're driving back down the road and, we crushed it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Monday morning will be here soon. And if you don't have the right, as you said, systems and processes to fill the gaps and drive the behaviors and the thought patterns that you want, hate to say this, but that offsite is going to be of limited value.
Yeah. And we realized as I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't know what we were doing when we started Equip. We just knew we wanted to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so we've had to ask people like AMPLOS. You didn't ask me to say this. We've had to ask people like Align in town. Will Gray has helped us a ton, but using people that actually know what they're doing. The first week of employment for our new employees, we send them over to you guys to do a kind of self-discovery, because self-awareness is a huge part of learning about yourself, of growing as an individual, but also figuring out how to work well as a team. And so sending it over to you guys so you guys can help them think about themselves and how they work together and communicate well and how they handle stress and how they respond to different situations has been a huge part. And so if I would have one piece of advice for other business owners, it would be like seek out help, seek out mentorship, seek out consultants that actually have done this hundreds of times that can help steer you in the right direction.
So be great in your lane, and then have good allies who can be in their lane and provide resources. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of head into the fourth lap here, fourth quarter or whatever you want to go with. And I want to spend kind of in some of our closing minutes focused on, let's have a little fun with this. So looking down the tunnel, I'm going to start with you, Alisha, and you can be kind of loading up here your thought sims, looking down the tunnel in the way of vision for where we hope to go. And this could be a function or a combination of on the business side, it could be on, certainly the internal side, whatever it might be. But when you look down that tunnel with aspirations, what do you hope you might realize eventually? Or what do you hope Equip might realize eventually as it moves down that tunnel?
Well, internally, we, I guess about a year ago, started what we have dubbed Equip 3.0, which is kind of the grow up stage. So kind of a maturing of, we're not a startup, we're established, we're not going anywhere. So now what do we need to do? And so we're really digging into, like Sims was talking about, the systems and getting those things in place for a scale up. And we don't know what that scale up is going to look like, but I just think that Equip is doing something special, and I think people are attracted to it. And so I just think we're going to see consistent growth over the next however many years we're able to continue doing this thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think from the get-go, as you've kind of heard, we've kind of been a culture forward, culture first firm.
Yeah.
And while that's created a great culture, I think there's other areas that we can grow in. I think we can continue to push our boundaries on design. We can continue to push our boundaries on quality. We continue to push culture. We continue to push our boundaries on systems. And I say those four because we've actually done something really fun, which you'll get a kick out of this, not because you like Harry Potter, quite the opposite.
Don't quiz me. But, I know almost nothing about Harry Potter.
So those are the four operational principles at Equip. And each of the partners kind of falls into one of those mindsets by default. And so we've created these different houses similar to Harry Potter. These houses are actually responsible for helping energize that aspect of the business. So whether that's culture, design, quality, and systems, they correspond to one of the partners' kind of mindsets. And those houses meet quarterly. They talk about how can the firm improve in this particular area. And so I think as we move forward, this is the way that we've decided, okay, we feel like we're doing something different here. We feel like we've done some things right. Let's kind of try to capture some of the things we feel like we're doing right and empower our younger people to help push those principles into the company, into the future, so that when the partners do end up retiring or leaving, Equip doesn't lose the essence of who they are.
Yeah,
and so point. We're trying to empower the young people back to that generosity core value to use their gifts and talents to further the firm in each of those four different ways.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I know there are households associated with Harry Potter, so.
Houses, not houses.
Where did that idea come from? To go through the Harry Potter, by way of example of the Harry Potter.
So we've always said at Equip that the four partners together, individually, we're not great architects, but together we make a really, really good architect. And so the four-headed monster, we kind of have been talking through the years about how different we all are and how different we think. And we started kind of putting words to that and language to that, like where we kind of we talked in the early years about how we needed, like when we first started, we needed to buy a TV, and this was such a huge deal when we were first starting out, right? Because I wanted to, I was on the financial side. I wanted to make sure we didn't spend too much money. Mm-hmm. Sandy was in the design side. He wanted to make sure it looked impressive to everybody around, and like was great, great looking. Jonathan wanted to make sure that it was the right technology from a system standpoint that integrated with everything that we had. And Dwight, from the quality, just wanted to make sure it was a good quality, like this TV is going to last. And so we had to realize, that's just a small example of the firm at large and how we kind of think through and work together when we make everyday decisions. How can we empower our people to move into the firm and move into their profession thinking about business in similar ways? And so our people have natural bents as well, and they can help even take us to the next step. And so as we think about growth, we don't have a number that we're trying to get to financially or numerically in terms of team members, but we know we want to continue to lean into these houses of design, quality, systems, culture. We want to make sure all those are there and hire the right people as we go along to do that. And so we'll probably continue with an organic type of growth, trying to stay flexible, trying to stay efficient, trying to stay smart in our growth and not get over our skis as we've been able to do so far, and kind of see where the Lord takes us from there. But that's kind of, as we think about growth in the future, that's we never want to lose who we are is right. Kind of the mantra we've always said.
Well, clearly you guys are doing some incredible things. You need to really be proud of what you're doing. I hope that you are. And I want to kind of close with a story, and this feels like the right story. I mean, we've kind of walked through the progression here of the tremendous growth of Equip, the dedication and commitment to internal culture, humanizing people, bringing added thoughtfulness toward business, all of the above. So I was there at the beginning. So you hopefully probably remember this story. And the financial guy was definitely the one who drove this decision. But a couple offices ago, this would have been like 2011 or 2014 timeline, okay? Yeah. Do you know this story? You probably know where I'm going with this. You were not yet a part of this, obviously. Right. Their first office was like a basement, all right? So this is a basement in downtown Greenville that I guess somebody who's a fire marshal said it was okay to have people work down there. So
no windows.
No. So the brother-in-law over here was asked to help move in the new office, right? And so here's what that entailed that day. I walk in there and all I see is a bunch of steel poles and a bunch of pieces of wood that look like almost kind of like a butcher block type piece of wood. It wasn't plywood. It wasn't probably also high quality butcher block. And what were we doing? We were building desks. Okay, but this wasn't an actual desk where you like order the thing and they give you the pieces. This was like pipes from Home Depot and pieces of wood from I don't know where, 84 lumber maybe. And so we're putting these things together and standing them up, and believe it or not, I think most of them we actually got it to where they were straight and not tilted and that kind of thing. But I think that's a really cool image, not just the basement space, but also the economically driven decision on the desks to think about like where you guys stand today. Mm-hmm. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted to do that if you had 40 people at that stage of the game. That might have, comprised more than just an afternoon. But wow, hopefully you guys can reflect on that, particularly you, Sims, given that's, where you guys were at that stage, and to think like, wow, what a remarkable progression we have enjoyed. And not at all that the time of growth is over in the least, but a really cool transformation that I hope you guys are proud of, and excited about what might be around the next corner for Equip.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can easily fall into is when we do look around and say, oh, we have 40 people. Oh, that's great. There's a verse in Romans that says, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. And so constantly reminding ourselves that everything we have is a gift from God, and we are to be stewards of those things. Another verse in Galatians says, let us not grow weary of doing good. And so both to not think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think, and not grow weary of doing good for other people. That's kind of the mindset that we want to just take into this next kind of Equip 3.0 and even to Equip 4.0, whatever that looks like, is trying to approach this with humility and servanthood and a stewardship mentality for other people, and creating a place that people love to come to work. So.
Awesome. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up, any final thoughts from you over there, Alisha, as we close? I'm just going to throw that in your lap.
Yeah. No, I think one thing that we have a ton of young employees that have only worked at Equip, and just, they probably get sick of me telling them like,
this is great.
It's not all like this. Like this is unique. This is special. And so just continuing to be a unique and special place, I think, just sets us up for success and makes us attractive to.
Yeah.
for the future.
Well, hopefully they'll listen. I always say wisdom is our ability to learn from others, right? Anyone can learn from your own story when you get slapped on the hand or whatever that might be, but can you learn effectively from others? Hopefully they can.
Yeah.
Without going out and seeing for themselves that
Right.
that really was a great place.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, big time thanks to you, Alisha, and Sims also for joining us on the Growth Project today. And for those of you that tuned in, so many takeaways, so many examples of what prioritizing culture can do to transform humans, to transform your business, your organization. So hopefully it is a loud and resounding and reinforced message of why this is worth your time, your effort, and your resources. So hopefully leaders can really hear that in a significant way and begin the process of putting things into play for your teams. Thank you for tuning in. If you continue to find value in what we are doing here at the Growth Project, we always appreciate reviews. You can find us both on Apple Podcasts and also Spotify. Give us feedback. Let us know how we're doing and what we're doing to power your growth. And we will look forward to our next conversation coming up here real shortly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Drew.
Thank you.